Chris here, taking a look at another Xiaomi phone. So this one is interesting because of what it sells for in China. It's very cheap. It is the Mi 10 Youth Edition. Now, why is it so interesting? Well, we've got a great price for the spec when you take a look at it. We've got a 5x periscope optical camera with zoom up to 50 times. My particular model here has 8 GB of RAM and 256 GB of storage. 48 megapixel main camera, 16 megapixel front-facing one, and the Snapdragon, yes, the 765G with 5G support. And you can even get the base model for just 330 euros. So it is a strong offering from Xiaomi, but it hasn't released here yet locally. And this is the Mi 10 Youth, but it's also known as the Mi 10 Lite Zoom edition, which hopefully we're going to see here in Europe at least, and other regions they will release this as well. So yes, the naming is getting a little confusing, and yes, they have so many phones.
So if you are new to my channel or a frequent viewer and you haven't done so already, please subscribe, check the bell icon to enable notifications. This way you don't miss out on any new videos from me. So first up, I'll show you what we get inside the box, just like all my reviews here, but look at this box here. So it's got this face on the front of it that says, "Are you okay?" and it's crying. I'm not really too sure what that is about. So we get a Type-C cable. This is Xiaomi's typical high-quality cable, USB to Type-C. Our charger here is Qualcomm's Quick Charge 4 spec, and it also does support this phone Power Delivery 3 spec. It's 22.5 watts, and it will charge this phone in under 1 hour. That's the 4,160 mAh battery. We also get some stickers, funny looking ones here. Again, I'm not really too sure what this is about. If you do know, let me know in the comments. And we also do have a TPU case. It's a quality one, clear as well. So you can see that nice design of the back, the color shifting out. So according to my measurements, this phone weighs in at 196 grams and is about 8.5 millimeters thick. So it's relatively thin. So this phone does have an on-screen display. You can see it right there, the always-on display. It can display various different information there, like notifications. Battery percent there is currently showing. So if I was to tap on the screen now, it would probably think I want to unlock. Now look at where the fingerprint reader is. This location, I feel, is just a little too low. It is quite quick. I'll just demonstrate to the face unlocking as well. So I just tap it and look at it. And has it seen me? There we go. It's because of the angle, but it is very quick there as well. Now, the phone is comfortable in hand. We do have a metal frame around it, and overall a very good build quality. There is a small, thin frame that goes actually around the glass, which is Gorilla Glass 5 we have on the front. I believe it's also Gorilla Glass 5 on the rear of it, or just a hardened glass. Now, access to this power on button is very good. And the volume, there's no complaints there from me at that location. It's just that fingerprint reader should be up a little bit higher. It's just a little bit awkward to get to. So the design team, I feel, could have moved it up like they have on other phones, like the K30 Pro, for example, and the Pocophone F2. So the front-facing camera, this is 16 megapixels. And yes, the bezels, the top and bottom, they're not exactly the slimmest I have seen, but overall they're not bad. I'll focus on that AMOLED screen soon. Now up top we do have an IR transmitter, 3.5mm headphone jack. Very good quality out of this headphone jack, by the way. This is typical Xiaomi. It does have your high-res certified audio too with this one. Now down the bottom we've got a single firing loudspeaker, so there is no dual loudspeakers in this particular model here. And as I mentioned before, the Type-C port does support Power Delivery 3 as well as Qualcomm's Quick Charge 4. No video out from this one, however. And the SIM tray, so it just takes 2 nano SIMs. There is no micro SD card support with this one. What else is on board? There's NFC, but what it is lacking is it does not have LTE band 20 or 28. If you're in Europe and you need that, then just wait for a local release, of course. Now, when you take a look at the back here, this is where all the fun begins with our cameras. So we've got an 8 megapixel 5x periscope camera that does have optical image stabilization. The main camera is 48 megapixels. Now this one is from OmniVision, I believe. I don't believe it's a Samsung or Sony sensor. OmniVision, they've been making sensors for a long time, so that's not actually a big problem. I know a lot of people go, oh, I don't know about that brand, but they're actually quite well known. We have an 8 megapixel ultra wide 2, and then a, yes, 2 megapixel macro camera. They kind of just add that in there to claim that they have 5 cameras in total, probably, but the macro shots at 2 megapixels aren't great, but I will give you a sample later on in this review. So the glass on the back is curved, and it does have a very good feel to it. So we have a very nice display in this one, 6.57 inches as mentioned. It's an AMOLED panel, and it does have a resolution of Full HD+. It supports HDR10+, covered with Gorilla Glass 5. And I find the touch response is good. The accuracy, edge detection as well, very good. And the maximum brightness does top out to be 730 nits of brightness. They claim 800, and that is even on the auto setting. I don't seem to be able to get that 800 as they claimed, but it's close. It's not too far off. And when you use it in direct sunlight, you can still make out everything just fine, which is, of course, the most important thing there. And real-world images, they do look very, very good on this screen. And the settings, you've got your typical options there for your white balance, scaling as well. Dark mode is there, and even DC dimming, which is great. So this phone is the Chinese model that I have, so it didn't come with Google Play Store, but it's actually all there. The framework is there. You just need to get the latest Play Store APK files. You can get that from all those different APK mirror type sites. And once you have that, it's really not a problem because you just need to install that and you're up and running there with Google Play Store. Set a few permissions as well with some other things because sometimes the notifications don't come through properly. Notifications are showing at the top there, and you can configure that little white LED to also flash for your notifications. Now, I'm running the App Store here with MIUI 11 that this currently has. It's not on MIUI 12. That won't be for a while before we start seeing those stable releases. Android 10, of course. And you can see that this is fluid, this is fast, and I enable the App Store with the Chinese ROMs definitely, because normally when you swipe up, that's their gesture to trigger their search engine, which I do not want. Now, they do have an apps vault thing there, but I've disabled that just to help increase the performance and get rid of bloat and things that are on there. Now, there is quite a bit of bloatware when you first get it. It's about 1.2 gigabytes worth of all these Chinese apps that you don't want. So you can uninstall most of them, but some of them, like gaming, for example, this games one, is still going to be in Chinese, and that is to be expected. Now, when you are in your recent apps here, good performance. I have noticed that sometimes if I'm, for example, just, I don't know, let's go into PC Mark here. That's actually just my screenshots, that it will sometimes accidentally, I don't know what's going on, but crash for a second. So it's a little tiny minor bug. It's not a crash, but the screen goes black for a split second, like it just reloads MIUI. That's the only thing I wanted to point out that I have noticed, and I'm pretty sure that they will fix that very quick because they're really good with the updates on the Chinese ROM. So haptic feedback on this keyboard, I do find to be pretty average. It's not like the K30 Pro that I have, which has a very good haptics motor. This one is just on the average kind of side here. Palm rejection is good, and triggering those gestures, I'm having really no issues with them at all. So all the swiping I'm doing right now is good. So let's jump into just a few things here in the gallery. So there was this big firmware update that I got, which was 2.8 gigabytes, and that's just optimizations, reduces system lag, increases the stability. They must be a little bit overwhelmed, their software team, with so many releases. And we do have this option to record voice calls. Okay, so this is still in the Chinese ROM. If you must have this ability, then it is there for those of you that keep asking about it. And what about free available storage? So you get 238 gigabytes free on first use with this 256 gigabyte version. With the 8 gigabytes of RAM right here, Android security patch level is April, which is not too far off, so that's fine. They're just a month behind or so. So Widevine level 3 cert here, not level 1. So Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, all going to be in standard definition. Unfortunately, they don't tend to bother with it with the Chinese ROMs because they don't need it for their applications. But we, of course, do. Now, some of the phones do come with that Widevine Level 1 cert, like the K30 Pro, for example, but we do have Camera 2 API, so that is one good thing there. And what about this? This is wireless performance. Very good for a mid-range phone, getting around 525 megabits per second maximum throughput. On the flagships with the Snapdragon 855 and 855 plus 865, I do see about 720, sometimes 750. Low performance speeds there, also very good with only 2 bars of signal. As long as it can get over 100, that is good, but nothing like the K30 Pro, which could actually get 300 and something with hardly any signal strength, which is pretty amazing. So Geekbench 5 score, this is fine. I mean, it's good. This is a lot faster than the Snapdragon 730G that's just in the Mi 10 Lite. And this is our Antutu version 8 score. So again, this is a decent score. This thing feels fast. This phone doesn't feel like a low-end phone at all. It actually kind of feels like an old-gen flagship with the 845 or something like that. It's kind of similar performance. And battery life. Battery life is very good because, yes, it's just a 60 hertz screen. It's AMOLED, so it's quite efficient. And then we do get very good runtimes here, 14 hours up to 15, kind of like the maximum speeds I see. So this is a 2-day mobile phone for most people under demanding use. heavy use, you'll still make it through a full day. And then what about GPS? So I'm actually doing this live indoors and it still gets an accuracy of 3 meters. When I'm outside though, the average signal strength there is then in the mid 30s, which is good. You can walk around, drive in your car and it will keep up with you. There's no problems with Qualcomm GPS, not for years now. And it's just the MediaTeks that used to have a problem really, but now the MediaTek phones can also get an accuracy of 1 meter, but Qualcomm always caps out at 3 meters of accuracy with the GPS. So it is really good to have a 3.5mm headphone jack in this particular model here. So I've been testing it out and we also do have FM radio with this. So wired audio sounds excellent to my ears. Xiaomi is typically very good at this and it does have that hi-fi certified audio. And also Bluetooth 5, no problems with that, it sounds good. And just a single downward firing loudspeaker, but overall it isn't a bad loudspeaker at all. Here's a sample of it. So this is powered by the Snapdragon 765G. The G is for gaming and it's optimized more towards gaming, but I'm a little disappointed with the gaming performance. It starts out very well. Playing a game like Shadowgun Legends at the high setting will be 60 frames per second, but once the phone starts to warm up, it then cuts the frame rate in half to 30 frames per second. I then put it onto the medium setting, and even on the medium setting, it was 45 frames per second and started to get a little bit choppy. Now, I have used this chipset before in other phones. I just think there's a little bit of optimization that is needed more here, and why this is happening, I'm not too sure. It could be a little bit of thermal throttling on the part of the GPU, just slowing the clocks down, and that is why we're seeing that there with the performance. But other games like Mobile Legends, for example, this one is super smooth. It's not so demanding, and this one runs at 60 frames per second at least. And it really depends on the game. So the more demanding games, you will just have to lower down the visual settings. So a little disappointing the gaming performance on this one here. If you're going to game a lot, then maybe look at another phone with maybe the Snapdragon 855, 855 Plus, or 865. Now, what about the thermals? So we've been gaming now for an hour, and it's getting up to around 36 degrees Celsius on the rear. Let's have a look at the front now. And now this one here is about 67 almost with our temperatures, maximum temperatures there. So yes, it is getting a little warm to the touch, but these thermals are actually quite good. All right, so onto our camera. It's probably what a lot of you are here for. So this is our main 48 megapixel sensor. 1 times tapping right here gives us the 5 times optical. Now, depending on the conditions, it won't actually, if it's in low light, use the 5 times optical camera. It will then swap over and just crop the main sensor, the 48 megapixel one, just 5 times. Now, I'll take a photo, give you a sample there. Now, if you tap and hold here, you get these options. So we've got 10 times. 10 times is still a semi kind of usable photo, and if you tap and hold again, I'll go up to 50 here. 50, look at that, that's an oil painting. So it's just like other cameras with this kind of marketing gimmick of digital zoom there that it's not really worth it. Now you've got AI modes over here on the left. We've got our macro mode there too, HDR. So normally I have that set just on auto, let the phone decide if it needs it or not. Portrait mode. And we've also got right at the top here our night mode. Night mode also works with selfies. And then in our pro mode here, we've got white balance, ISO focus. Now ISO goes all the way up to 6400. You can choose the lens, and the pro mode also works in video mode too. Now one handy little tip here is that if you're focusing on something, you can tap and hold, and that means it will lock the focus and also lock our exposure to give you better footage without having the exposure going all over the place. So that is very handy to have right there. And let's have a look now at some samples. Now this is a sample of ultra wide video, so you can only shoot in 1080p max with the ultra wide camera here. The quality is not as good as the main sensor, even at 1080p. It does have some electronic image stabilization, so it is nice and smooth at least. .4K video now, 30 frames per second is the maximum we can shoot. The audio bitrate sadly is only 96 kilobits per second, so it seems they only use the 320 bitrate in their flagships. Good electronic image stabilization, and yes, it has been a while since I have shot footage here. And if you want to zoom in, you can, but it's all just digital. It's not going to use the 5 times camera. But if you do select the 5x camera before you start shooting, you can use it. It's 1080p max, and it does have that stabilization, which is good. I'll just move slowly here. The focus does tend to pulse in and out, however, I have noticed. So this is the front-facing camera, 1080p maximum, and of course we do not have any electronic image stabilization. I mean, they don't even add it with their flagship, so I did not expect it to be here. Maybe one day they will. Now, if they do add electronic image stabilization with the front-facing camera, it'll probably crop in about this close. But I think it is worth it, because then their footage, if you're walking along or holding it out, is actually nice and steady then, like other manufacturers are adding. Overall, this 1080p quality is not bad for 1080p. It's just that I want image stabilization. I think most people would want this as well, and improve that audio quality.
All right, so what did you think about the camera samples there? I think the main sensor does still take a good image, that OmniVision, 48 megapixels. I find the ultra wide, they're a little washed out and disappointing. It's only 8 megapixels. It's just the lens, the quality, especially when you look at the edges, it's a little distorted, it's blurred, it's not really capturing that much detail. And that's one of the weaknesses there. Now, the front-facing camera is good, but with video, no electronic image stabilization. That's very common with Xiaomi. Hopefully one day they will actually end up fixing that in their phones. And then the audio quality, we're down again to the 96 kilobytes per second audio there, which I prefer they would just use across the board now, 320 like other manufacturers would. So the 5x periscope camera is great to get in really close to your subjects. That's good. Portrait shots look okay, but there's still some optimization definitely with the saturation in some of the images there. So all around, very good build quality on this. Now it feels like it is a metal frame on this one, but it's kind of hard to tell really sometimes because they use that very dense hard plastic with a metallic paint over the top of it. And the finish is so well in the build that it could fool you into thinking that this actually is metal when it could actually be plastic. But I don't know 100% without actually scratching it. I'm not going to do that. Really nice screen on that, the Super AMOLED panel. It is very bright too, getting over 700 nits of brightness, which is great for looking at it in direct sunlight, no problem there. Now the performance is very, very good for the most part, okay? Sometimes I've noticed that now and then there will be just that little kind of bug that I saw where the screen goes black for a second when you multitask or swap between with recent apps. I don't know why that's happening. It's just a small little bug, it's something there. But I really noticed that where it's a little bit disappointing for me isn't with the cameras, with the video, no lack of electronic image stabilization, no. It is gaming, for some reason. I expected this to perform better than it does. I've tested out other phones with the same chipset, and it seems like they're either limiting the clock speeds the GPU can do, they're thermal throttling it a little bit sooner than maybe they should, because it's not really getting that warm to the touch. So they've gone and opted for extended gaming with lower thermals at the cost of perhaps FPS, because Shadowgun Legends should be running at about 60 frames per second the whole time on the medium setting. But what happens is it starts out at 60, gets warm, and you'll notice that, okay, it's 45, and then it gets down to 30, and sometimes below 30, and getting a little bit choppy. So optimization, ROM updates, I think are clearly needed from Xiaomi, so we can get the best out of this one. But overall, I think for the price it's selling for, if you can pick up one for even cheaper later on, then that is great if you don't need LTE band 20. Now, it does have NFC on board here. It does have very fast charging. It's under 1 hour. That is great, even supporting Power Delivery 3 spec. If you've got a Power Delivery 3 charger, that is very good there. So really, so much on offer, but probably wait for the European release if we see it. Now, I will be reviewing and covering the Mi 10 Note Lite and then the Mi 10 Lite as well. Two other Xiaomi mobiles that are on the way that I should have next week. And yes, it is getting a little confusing. So many releases from them. But if we end up getting a Mi 10 Lite Zoom edition, which this really is, locally, that will be brilliant, and that will be the one to go for. So I just think with some software optimization, this is a fantastic phone. It just isn't quite there at the moment. Give them time, and hopefully we'll see that local release. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will be back with plenty more. So do give a thumbs up if you like this in-depth review, and also subscribe if you haven't to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.